Welcome to today's Explainer. We're about to take a literal descent inward, embarking on what's basically the ultimate hero's journey. Our mission today is to completely uncover the hidden architecture of our reality by exploring the profound and honestly often misunderstood depths of Carl Jung's psychology.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to think for a second about the choices you made just this past week. Have you ever experienced emotions without fully understanding why? Or maybe sudden fears, unexplained impulses, or these recurring patterns in your life that seem to just pop up entirely on their own? Well, what if much of what you believe to be a conscious, deliberate choice is actually being guided by invisible forces operating right beneath your awareness?
You see, Carl Jung didn't look at the human mind as some simple machine driven only by conscious thought. The unconscious isn't just a dusty storage unit for forgotten memories. It's a vast, layered, and deeply alive inner universe. It's an entire psychological reality filled with universal forces that quietly shape our personalities, our relationships, and even our daily suffering, long before our logic ever has a chance to intervene.
Moving into Section 1, the mask and the shadow, the hidden actors in our daily lives.
Think of your psyche kind of like one of those classic chiaroscuro oil paintings. There's the brightly lit surface of your ego, but right beneath that sits a really dark, heavy underpainting. These are the hidden actors directing our daily lives from the wings. There's a very clear contrast between your authentic self and your persona. The persona is simply the mask you wear to function in society. And look, it's absolutely necessary. Without it, social life would literally collapse. But what's really interesting here is the danger that arises when we mistake this necessary social mask for our true, authentic self. Jung actually observed that a lot of midlife crises aren't caused by failure at all. They're caused by success that was achieved at the cost of authenticity. The outer life looks perfectly stable, while the inner life is quietly starving.
And hiding right behind that carefully crafted mask is the shadow. The shadow contains everything you deny, repress, or just refuse to acknowledge about yourself. Traits you were maybe taught were unacceptable growing up, or desires that frightened you. But the real paradox here is that the more you hide those traits, the stronger the shadow actually becomes. It doesn't just disappear, it waits. It eventually acts out through irrational anger, projection, and self-sabotage. So the crucial point to understand is that this kind of emotional suffering isn't a sign of weakness. It's actually your psyche's natural demand for wholeness.
I really want you to let this core quote sink in. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Jung is explicitly telling us that our inner darkness is not some enemy to be defeated. It's a crucial teacher. If we don't confront our shadow, we become unconsciously possessed by it, totally trapped in repeated conflicts that we mistakenly blame entirely on the outside world.
Which brings us to Section 2, Mirrors of the Mind, Dreams and Romantic Projections.
Let's step even deeper into the underworld of the mind now. How do these invisible forces express themselves when our conscious ego is fast asleep? Well, for Jung, dreams definitely were not just random noise produced by a resting brain. They're highly meaningful communications. When your conscious mind is quiet, the unconscious speaks up, and it uses these inherited, universal symbols called archetypes. Think of figures like the wise old man, the hero, or the disruptive trickster. The unconscious actively uses these powerful images to compensate for the rigid, one-sidedness of our waking life. Its ultimate goal? Bringing us back into balance.
And you know, this phenomenon isn't just limited to when we're asleep. The anima and animus represent the profound emotional, intuitive, and logical depths within ourselves. But because they are so often unconscious, we tend to project them outward, especially onto our romantic partners. This brilliantly illustrates why relationships often feel so incredibly magical at the very beginning. We aren't just falling in love with the other person, we're actually falling in love with our own unconscious image reflected beautifully back at us.
But inevitably, those projections fade, and reality intrudes. So I have to ask, how much of your romantic disappointment is driven by these unexamined forces? Jung firmly believed that sudden, devastating relationship conflicts are rarely just failures of love. More often than not, they are failures of self-knowledge. When you expect another human being to permanently embody your own unconscious ideal, well, disappointment is just mathematically inevitable.
Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds. Collective madness, when the unconscious takes over society.
So, what happens when it's not just one person projecting their shadow, but millions? Individual repressed forces pool together and begin to quietly infect entire cultures. Both historical and modern political divisions actually act as psychological symptoms.
Neutrally speaking, when the shadow remains unintegrated, the societal result is often the demonization of outsiders, whether that's minorities, rival nations, or political opponents across the aisle. Archetypal projections lead straight to blind fanaticism and a desperate search for saviors. We might be highly technologically advanced, but as Jung warned us, we largely remain psychologically primitive.
Think about it. In the past, religion, mythology, and art served as symbolic containers for these massive psychological forces. But when people stop thinking symbolically and lose that connection with their inner life, their fundamental need for meaning doesn't just vanish. Instead, it unconsciously latches onto really dangerous literal external narratives, rigid ideologies, celebrity worship, extreme nationalism, or a blind obsession with endless progress. The symbols change, sure, but the unconscious psychological hunger remains exactly identical.
And this brings us to a really profound realization. A society made up of unconscious individuals inevitably becomes polarized, reactive, and dangerous. Fear replaces understanding, and projection entirely replaces dialogue. Therefore, making the unconscious conscious isn't just some personal self-help project. Knowing yourself is an urgent, absolutely vital ethical duty for the health of the entire collective.
All right, Section 4, the path to freedom, the process of individuation.
So how do we actually escape this psychological captivity? We begin the upward arc of the hero's journey through what Jung called individuation, aligning our surface ego with the deep truth of our whole self. As we walk this path, we often encounter synchronicity. Have you ever experienced a coincidence that just felt way too precise to be random? A conversation that somehow answered an unspoken question in your heart? Jung saw these as distinct signs of alignment with deeper layers of meaning. But to experience this, we have to give up our modern obsession with control and certainty. We actually must learn to tolerate ambiguity, paradox, and the very subtle signals our psyche sends to guide us.
Individuation is a practical, lifelong dialogue with yourself. It requires actively confronting the shadow, deliberately withdrawing our projections from other people, listening carefully to our dreams, and questioning the identities we just assumed were absolute. And importantly, this is crucial, this doesn't mean withdrawing from society. It means participating fully in the world, but without losing your inner truth to it. It's about safely integrating these opposing internal forces.
The absolute ultimate key to this whole journey is that awareness is not domination, it's illumination. You don't defeat the invisible forces by wrestling them to the ground. The moment you simply recognize and name an inner impulse, it loses its compulsive grip on you. When you accept a disowned part of yourself, it no longer needs to sabotage your life just to be heard. Those previously invisible forces transform from hidden tyrants into conscious, helpful collaborators.
To wrap up today, I want to leave you with a deeply reflective question to take with you. Where are you living on autopilot? Where do your reactions just override your reflection? And where do destructive patterns keep repeating despite your absolute best intentions? I strongly urge you to bravely face your own darkness. Don't look away from it. Answer the call of your unconscious and begin your personal journey toward genuine wholeness. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you on the next deep dive.